Hi, everybody. This is Erika from In the Company of Cards and Dr. Lena from Lena Down Under. If you are not subscribed to our channels, you should be. Remember that our channels, our respective channels, are where we read cards. Here on Wednesdays, we call this Worldview 360, and this is where we just come together from across the world to each other to have a conversation. And you all are welcome to eavesdrop, certainly to participate in the chat and ask questions and talk to each other. But it's our time to just pause, breathe, and maybe look at a couple of issues in some depth. So this is our 9th episode, Lena. Next week, we'll be in double digits.
That's thrilling.
So good to see you again.
Thank you. And it's great to be here because I think the one thing that's almost impossible to do in an average day, in an average week, is to actually kick back and think a bit deeper. We sort of see something, react to it, or avoid news and run from it, all of which is understandable. But we just try and pick a couple of topics that are dominating and have a look from a different angle. Hopefully that's what we're providing.
Right. So I guess before we get into what may very well be, I don't know, the meat of the conversation, people, inquiring minds want to know about Netanyahu and whether Netanyahu is alive or not. We're not pulling cards here, although there may be times when I say, oh, Lena, let's pull cards. But this is not those times. So, Lena, you and I discussed this just now off stage, and we seem to be of one accord that he may very well be ill, but he is still in the land of the living. So, what I wanted to focus on in terms of this particular issue is the way that the Israeli press has handled it.
Yes, it's been very weird.
I thought so. Yeah. So what they did was they've got, you may have seen it. I think there may be even more than one, but the one I saw was a video of Netanyahu in a coffee shop, supposedly. Now, why is he in a coffee shop? That's my first question. Why not put him in front of cameras, in front of an international press corps, and they can see for themselves and then report back to us, yes, he's alive, or no, he's not alive. But no, they didn't do that. They went the cheap way. And by cheap, I don't mean money-wise. I mean the kind of they went for the cheap laugh is what they did. And it's not funny. This is not funny.
Yes, this isn't funny. It's not funny.
So supposedly we had Netanyahu holding a cup of coffee. Ostensibly, I think he had a 6th finger. So obviously AI was certainly involved. And the commentary and what he said was, no, I'm alive. The only thing I'm dying for is a cup of coffee. There is nothing funny about his place on the world stage.
No.
Or whether he's alive or dead, whatever. It's just, it was cheap. It just went for the cheap laugh. And I do think AI was involved in that. Now the speculation is all about his ear. I don't know if you saw that. People are like, the ear is different. It's not the same ear. Whatever. I don't know. I think he's still alive. But I would encourage Israel, if he is, to put him in front of a press gaggle and let the international press verify that he's alive.
Yeah, and you can only keep this up for so long.
Exactly.
Because, of course, gossip, innuendo, and out-and-out conspiracies will fill the vacuum. And the last thing we need now is wondering if any of these top engineers of violence and horror are still in the hot seat. We need to know what these people are doing, seeing, and thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. So AI is not helpful here. That was definitely AI. I hope that Netanyahu understands the seriousness of the situation and would not have participated in any kind of jokey thing like that. I'll tell you what, I don't think he would. I mean, I'm not a fan by any means, but I think he, if nothing else, understands the weightiness of things. So I guess it's just a caveat to our audiences that just because you see something, sometimes you can't believe your eyes because AI is a thing. So do your due diligence, do not jump to conclusions, and realize that people are who have the ability are enjoying the opportunity to play us when they can, and so that we should not take the bait there. So
yes. Then there's also talk about the Iranian leader. So
yeah.
this is the son who's the replacement of the dead father, bearing in mind he lost virtually his whole family.
His father, his wife, his child.
Children.
Yes.
Two, I think. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Now there is talk, someone says in the comments here, that he may have lost a leg in those strikes and was in a coma. But again, we can't leap to these things. He may well have been injured, and yeah, we've just got to push on and demand answers. If they're not there, either because they're in hiding, either because they're being treated for serious health or injuries, who's taking their place?
Right.
Who is the next in charge in Iran and in Israel and, dare I say, the US?
Well, we'll get to that in a second, but one more second on Iran. I did hear that the person, in terms of who's taking the next place, there was I forget his name, but there was someone who was going to be the next in line to be the negotiator. This would be the person that we would have done business with. Well, we killed him too. So this is problematic. And you're right. We do need to sort of try to keep track of, well, who are the players really? But,
yeah,
well, we'll know when we know. And now
yes, this is fraudulence going on. So
yeah. So you
prior to the actual, sorry?
Go ahead.
Oh, prior to the actual strikes, who was sent to navigate and negotiate in the Middle East? There was Steve Witkoff, who's a real estate guy from New York, couldn't find Iran on a map if his life depended on it, let alone the individual Gulf states, and Jared
Kushner, right.
And apparently, I've heard that from real intelligence sources internationally, and he could get into big trouble for this, Kushner lured Iranian leaders to a meeting, and that's when they struck and had them, because they knew they'd be there at this thing, and he was instrumental in an old school booby trap. Well,
you know what?
Absolutely disgusting in global terms.
It is. And we'll be talking about this later as well, but just a little bit of a heads up or a preview. I just want to say thank you as an American, a lowly American, to the international community for refusing to say, well, okay, we'll send some soldiers. Okay, we'll send our boats. Okay, we'll talk about that later. I just think that in the same way that Europe needed Americans in the Second World War, the U.S. needs the world community. And it's in a different way. Instead of us rushing in the way that we did during World War II, we need everybody to just stand back and stand down. And this brings us, we'll get back to that, but it brings us to what you alluded to. We're talking about what's real, what's not real, who's going to stay, who's going to go, et cetera. The felon is crazier than a bed bug, getting crazier by the minute, to say when he's asked, when will this end? I'll know it in my bones. Okay, boomer. Okay. I think that what will happen is that there will be sort of revived talk about the 25th Amendment. How could there not be?
How could there not be? And we've all, as individuals, I'm sure I can speak for most of the viewers here, saying we can't stand looking at his face, we can't stand listening to his voice.
Right.
However, at the moment, I think we're almost compelled to, or at least watch people who tell you what he says, but it's actually so shocking to physically see him. I was watching another podcast and summing up what he'd said this last week in a minute or whatever.
Mhm.
And it showed the full-blown lunacy. Like day 2, we've won. And day 4, the UK, they want to join, but they always do that after we've won. Who needs them? And after a week going, we're still winning. We're still really busy. We'll get back to you because we're still winning, even though we won. We're
Right.
winning, active state. And then followed by, please help us. We have shot ourselves in the foot and can't get a drop of oil through the Strait of Hormuz.
Right.
So this all came tumbling out. And the reason the world has said no this time, well, there'd be many reasons, but 2 that strike me. One is tariffs, where he put 90 countries offside.
Right.
But people would have still dealt with that craziness and helped had he not gone around the world and gone to meetings of the UN and NATO and the G7 and the big Asian economic summit saying, all your leaders are terrible.
Yeah.
You are all losers. And now he expects people to queue up.
No, this is exactly what needs to happen. You know, the best analogy I can come up with is a toddler who's having a tantrum. The last thing that you want to do is run around and try to placate that toddler and offer them toys and candy and ice cream and, you know, just act like it's not even happening. Just
and you know when that's stronger as a parent or a grandparent thing, if everyone around you is on the same page.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what you're working towards, right?
Right.
They're not angry, hostile,
Right.
they're not judging you. They're just going, you know what? No, let them do the tantrum over there.
That's right.
Most effective.
That's right. Now, this won't affect him, by the way. This will only cause him to escalate, right? Because he's a narcissist, and this will feel like a narcissistic wound, right? So he will escalate. But the fact of the matter is, this stance by the world leaders will affect other decision makers here in the country. Absolutely, it will. And that's what needs to happen, is that they need to have enough wind in their sails by seeing the world saying, no, thanks, we're not playing. That they say, okay, this guy is creating for us more trouble than he's worth.
The equation always had to get to that point, because until now they could kid themselves that, you know, he was so popular, etc.
Exactly.
But now the equation doesn't work anymore.
Right.
People he endorses don't get up. He is a albatross around their necks now.
That's right. Somebody said something interesting. I think it's worth mentioning. They were talking about how people have ignored his actions, like some of the, you know, SA stuff that he's been involved in, because people don't want to exhaust themselves with his abuse. I have to tell you, I get that. I have a treadmill. You can probably see it behind me. I get on it every morning, and I usually listen to the news. Well, he was giving some press conference.
And you're
running. I'm looking at my heart rate, and I'm saying, I'm on this thing every day. My heart rate is never this high. So you know what? I'm turning him off, and I'm putting some music on. It's really important that we pay attention to our own, you know, emotional and mental regulation, because it's a lot. It is a lot. But the worst thing that we can do is just to turn it off altogether. So
exactly, it's finding that.
It's got to be a balance. That's right. So anyway, 25th Amendment. So for those who don't know or forgot or whatever, 25th Amendment says that, and it has to be introduced by the Vice President. And it has to be passed by 2/3, I think, of the House and Senate. Right.
Of the House and the Senate? I
In the
can't
Senate.
remember.
And so, and what is it? It says the President of the United States, either through physical or mental incapacitation, is in fact incapable of carrying out their duties and will be removed from office. That's a huge thing to say, but I will tell you, if Europe continues to stand down, and not just Europe, Asia, Australia, everyone, if the community of nations just looks like they're looking at a toddler.
I know, it's fascinating because I've never seen it in my lifetime. I don't think any of us have. And I, on my own channel, moan constantly, at least once a month. I tell viewers, we in Australia went into every conflict with the US from back in the day.
Yes.
And this is the first time our government has said no, and it is happening. And I think it was not that coordinated because it happened very quickly.
Right.
So I'm sure EU leaders who know each other were talking a bit more, and different ones who sort of have existing relationships. But I don't think it was.
No, you know what, Lena? It's energetic. It's energetic.
It's energetic. Everyone said, well, now I'm not going to be the only one. So no.
Right. It's energetic. It's a beautiful thing. And I think that it will go a long way towards the right sizing of the US. We always thought of ourselves as this, exceptionalist nature, shining city on a hill, etc. We need to be right sized. And the best way for us to be right sized is for us not to be helped when we are running around like bullies around the world. I mean, Venezuela, now it's going to be Cuba. Iran, it is conduct, not just unbecoming. You cannot live in the community of nations and conduct yourselves this way. I also hope, I really hope, and I mean, this is a big word to use, but I guess I mean to use this big word. I hope there will be Nuremberg-like trials over some of this, because people have died. People have died overseas in all kinds of countries. Service people here who didn't need to die. I really think that, and it's not just a whole Nuremberg for the felon. I think that all of the people who aided and abetted him should be held to account by the world court. That's what needs to happen.
It absolutely has to happen. And the problem is, the Nixon era was what it was, but it was a gigantic scandal at the time.
That's right.
But in the end, he got his little dog registration from Ford, and when his AG went to jail, but he didn't.
Right.
Now, I can see a similar thing happening in the sense I've never seen the felon in jail. His age will probably save him from that. But as for these trials, the truth and reconciliations need to be done. And to shortcut that, the country won't ever learn. If you jump over that stage and go, okay, we've got someone else in now and let's move on, and wasn't it bad?
If it's shortcut, it will be what happened with the Civil War all over again.
All over again.
Lincoln saying, let them up easy, and the South never learning the lesson. This is why we have this, this is why race is this wound that will never heal. The problem is, Lena, that you would think that we would say, oh yeah, that's kind of like the Civil War. Well, we don't want to do that again. So we need to really hold people to account. We won't do it. It has to be the world doing it.
Yes,
this is true. Plenty of Americans will support it, absolutely. But this needs to be a worldwide response.
Yes, yes. And Jack Smith hopefully will come back into the fray because he's got all the legal paperwork to go back to, just the mishandling of the documents, just one strand of this bad behavior.
That's right.
But because the legal stuff always takes so long, to me, the two bits of good news would be, one, Jack Smith is ready to go, but also Sheldon Whitehouse is ready to go with impeaching Clarence Thomas
Yep.
and Alito over financial corruption.
That's right. That's right.
That means they can be impeached if the numbers change in the House and the Senate. Suddenly there's only 7 justices and 2 will have to be replaced, and that changes everything.
That's right. Well, also, I'll tell you something. I'm wondering whether the Supreme Court is having second thoughts, because the felon has been incredibly rude in his comments about the Supreme Court. One, of course, he's angry about their response to tariffs. And 2, what was the other one? It was tariffs and I forget, some other decision that he's just furious. And I am hoping that some of those Supreme Court judges will say, we cannot be perceived as his boys and girls.
No. The problem is they've let it go too far, and until they stand up and we see it in a televised event saying we revoke the immunity,
I know,
that we gave him. So yes, they're uncomfortable. Yes, they're going, did we blow this? Yes, we've made ourselves redundant. Yes, we've dismantled the power from the impotent Congress. Yes, we have been instrumental in the destruction of American democracy, and they should be made to go on an apology tour about that. The whole Supreme Court has to be reworked on the other side of this.
Yep.
Because without that, that's where the buck stops legally.
That's
so
right.
if they're easily bought off or they're just not up to the job, they have to go.
It's such an opportunity, right? As scary as all of this
is the upside.
It's an opportunity for a do-over and to get it right this time. You know?
Yeah, and that means changing hardcore things, but I think people will be more ripe for it now. Normally people hate change,
You know what? It's really unfortunate about the Strait of Hormuz, but I will say this. When people find that there are now supply chain issues, and I'm not just talking about gasoline, I'm talking about
everything.
Everything that we buy. You've heard the word plastic, you all. And it all involves petroleum. That's how that stuff's made. So when you can't get your hair products, when you can't get your plastic, whatever, anything.
New mouse.
Yes, anything. Right. And I think that, again, if money is the common denominator, we will feel this. We will feel this. For him to think, the felon, that ships from around the world are going to come in and risk the lives of their people to get the bombs out of he's got to be kidding. So what's going to happen is we're going to feel that choke point.
Yes.
And it will not be pleasant. And I have said to my American viewers more than once, Americans, I mean, no shade, but you all love things quick, fast, and in a hurry, and as easy as possible. We'll chalk it up to us being the youngest, nation on the block. But we're going to be feeling a little bit more pain. And it's not just us. We're not the only ones. It's the people who sell us that stuff. And I think that there will be bugs in the ear of people who can enact this 25th Amendment. I think watch, and I don't think it'll take a long time. I think this will happen fast. With the price of gas going up the way that it is every day, I think this snowball is building snow.
Yeah, and it's got to give at some point. So the 25th Amendment has to be introduced, as I understand it, by the Vice President.
That's right.
Okay. So you've got J.D. Vance, the smoky-eyed sociopath, as they refer to him on I've heard.
Right.
Now, we know he's ambitious. We know he's sold out. He had quite good principles at one point and threw them over his shoulder and decided to go in with the worst of the worst.
Right. But if he thinks that Trump is hurting his prospects, he will turn on it.
What's interesting, I don't think JD is the strongest guy in the world, right? I actually think he's a marshmallow. So if you'd asked him 6 months ago or something, I'm sure he's biding time to get the big chair. I'll smooth it over. This guy can't last forever. I think he was into it, right?
Mhm.
And as the spawn of Peter Thiel, he had his role to play, and I think he was totally up for it. I think as it gets closer, I think he's feeling less prepared than he thought because he has no depth to call on.
No.
He's like a 10 pin at the bowling alley,
Yes, but
It
he
wouldn't take
also
much.
knows, but he'll be propped up by by Thiel and whoever his bosses are. I mean, he'll be told what to do.
Yeah, the problem is, and this is where these guys, Project 2025 guys and, the tech bros, because they learnt nothing of history and because they see their own worlds in a bubble unrelated to how people's lives actually work, they've underestimated. Now, JD Vance personally went on his world tour. Remember, he referred to the Chinese people as peasants.
Yeah. Oh, he's
Right.
awful.
Now, that means China is not going to do deals with JD Vance, and they're not going to make it easy for America for the next 400 years, right? That rudeness, arrogance, bullying went straight in that something else that was just political wouldn't.
Right.
He told all the European leaders they were losers and gutless and all those terrible things. So he has no allies.
And
That's
he's
my
not
point.
popular here.
He has no allies. So
Right.
Peter Thiel can pump all the money he wants into JD Vance, but what the American people will be seeing that they wouldn't have seen a year ago is no allies. You get another guy and there's still no allies.
That's right. That's right.
None.
That cult of personality does not get bequeathed to the next person.
Yes.
Right.
It never does.
No, never does.
Yeah.
So we have half an hour, and that's good because we wanted to do a deep dive that kind of expands on what we talked about last time. And the reason is that, again, it's important to do a deep dive on the one hand, but also to have the bigger picture on the other hand. So Lena, as the sociologist, I'm gonna defer to you. We want to talk more about what is going on in terms of the influence of the three monotheistic religions and what's going on there.
Yeah. Well, we're taught that I'm going to say in the West, but it's not exclusively in the West. There's three major branches of monotheistic religions. So we've got, in order of age, we've got Judaism, roughly 5,500 years old. We've got Christianity just nudged over the 2,000, and Islam that's coming in around the 1,500 mark. But if you listen to the language that is coming out in this war, if you put me in a coma 2 years ago and woke me up this week, I'd be going, what are these people talking about? Right. So you have commanders on battleships, MAGA commanders that have made their way through Hex's system and replaced grown-up, experienced, strategic commanders, and they're telling active service people, this is a holy war, it's Armageddon, Trump is the chosen one, you're here to do that. So how is that different from jihad?
No, it's not.
So you've got then the theological Shiite stranglehold on Iran that is holding the country back and holding its own people to hostage too. An ancient set of beliefs that is no longer serving a modern country. And then Israel, where Netanyahu couldn't survive on his own politically. This is 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So he needed the vote of the right-wing settler movement, the the movement for Greater Israel and so forth. And he's invoking Amalek and other terms from the Old Testament. So we've got this weird crusade going on.
Amongst all three.
Amongst all three. And I just thought, this is interesting. So then I started thinking in terms of, not that I'm an astrologer, but in terms of astrology, we keep hearing that it's the end of these giant cycles. And we're coming through a giant cycle of religions in Pisces, which is secret and underground. And you just have faith. That's all you need, have faith. I'll tell you what to do, what to think, and when to think it. So you just have to believe. And women have not done well in these contexts.
In any of those
religions.
Extremist sects. Yeah.
The more modern versions of all these religions are fine. Right. Highly educated Jewish women, highly educated Christian women, etc., and highly educated Islamic women. Particularly under Saddam, ironically, it was one of the best places for tertiary education for women. Yeah. All of it. So I'm talking about the stuck space in each of these patriarchal religions. So things were much better for people in different mini eras of history, but this is not one of them.
No.
And so we're looking at, everyone's got God on their side. And I think the fascinating thing is it's forcing us all, and we have the luxury, let's face it, of being sort of on the outside and not being bombed in southern Lebanon or Gaza or Qatar this morning, where the Iranians bombed Qatar, etc. Tel Aviv, people are rushing to bomb shelters. So to understand that unless, it's what we were saying before about the trials, unless these are properly exposed, talked about, acted on, taught as history, encouraging people to actually get their heads around this, we are doomed to keep repeating this tired pattern that always ends in war. So I'll leave it there. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I wonder, in my most pessimistic times, I think about the fact that we are primates, all of us. And fortunately, we have, we do the metacognition thing. So we think about thinking, right? And we don't know, maybe primates do too, but we know we think about thinking. And we are self-reflective, but we are still primates. And primates all have this urge to dominate. We just do.
Well,
and I think
what the males do, which is interesting.
But there's also psychopathy amongst primates. I mean, the example would be a mother chimp who, there were two female chimps, and the one was a psychopath. So she approaches the second one, the one who has the baby, and she's looking like she wants to admire the baby. So the one with the baby shows her the baby, and the original one takes it, eats it, and then, because that's bad enough, now she ate the chimp's baby, puts her arm around her to comfort her over the loss of her child. So I am saying that as primates, but as human beings, there are urges that we always have to temper and tame and contain in order to live in a civilized society and not have everybody's babies being chewed up and so this appeal to, I mean, isn't it interesting that these three monotheistic religions all have growing and expanding sects, we'll call them SECTS, that are rabid in very particular and very similar ways. Like, again, the domination of women, the subjugation of children, because that's in all three.
Yes, and see, I'm always a bit leery of the human nature arguments, in the sense of there are endless examples of human nature in other cultural and social contexts that rely and reinforce and prosper under cooperation as opposed to subjugation.
Right, but let's think about why that would be. So the example that comes to my mind is in Africa. I don't know what country it is, but if somebody misbehaves, let's say whatever, in whatever way, instead of being shunned and talked to sternly or whatever, beaten, whatever, no, they put that person in the middle of the group, and the whole entire community comes out and encircles the person. And then one by one, everyone in the community addresses the person in the center, the bad one that did the bad thing. And you know what they do? They tell them something good about them. I love the way you blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. I remember when you and I, da, 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 da. And so the object of the game is to call in as opposed to call out. So this is an example of what you're talking about. The thing is, it's what you said, though, but it's what you said. It's like, where is the most benefit? Those cultures and those societies realize that the greatest benefit lies in keeping everyone, not shunning anyone, having harmony amongst each other. Other cultures, like the US, have learned a different lesson. This is why we lionize capitalism like it's a god. What this doesn't even make sense. But we have done that calculus, and that's why I think it speaks to the worst primate pieces of us that we have turned that way.
Exactly. And I think it was Paul Ryan who made all his staff read the dreadful Ayn Rand books.
Uh-huh.
The Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged.
Yep.
She's what?
Atlas Shrugged. I remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Hideous. So her basic idea, Ayn Rand, I guess she was big in the 40s and 50s or something.
Yes.
Was there's no such thing as society. No. It's a level playing field. You just get out and do it. Don't ask the government for anything. So Margaret Thatcher took up this idea, right? Parents should pay for their children's education, and everyone should pay for their own everything. And if you can't afford it, it's because you're a loser and you're lazy, and all that stuff got reinforced. But with Ayn Rand, it was about there's no such thing as society.
Right.
You can't trust anyone else. You can't rely on anyone else. And therefore, it's all about you. Right. And that worked for the GOP mentality.
Yes.
Now, what happened to Ayn Rand? I'm glad you asked. She died alone and in poverty.
Yep.
She actually ended up on benefits until they ran out, and she died. We've got to revisit what being in a society means. Absolutely. Now, in modern cities, 3 million people, 5 million people, 10 million people, we can't be friends with everybody in that city, right? That's not what we're talking about. No. But alliances, we need allies and alliances and like-minded people and tolerance for others to get the most out of that city, to make the city function as best it can and have a good life within that context. You know what I mean?
I agree. I'm thinking about the Christian, we've got these 3 monotheistic religions, and of course I live here, so I'm thinking about this Christian nationalist piece. And I think one of the things that is sort of related to what you're talking about is the concept of whiteness. When people came here, immigrated here from other countries, let's say from Ireland, right? Or from Italy. Although I will say the Italians have done a better job of it probably than the Irish. But they were rewarded not for continuing to think of themselves as Italian or as Irish or as Scottish, but to think of themselves as just white. Well, we think about, though, what is white. It's not what is attached to it in terms of culture, culture in all forms, art, music, nothing, right? So what happens is they have to create some sort of identity. And so that's why you get this religious fervor and this macho male, whatever it is. It's because I think human beings hunger for what you say, society, connection, interrelatedness. And I think that by being forced to think of yourself only as white.
It's exactly the same in Australia. We had a famous advertising jingle in the 70s, and the hook line was Australians, kangaroos, meat pies and Holden cars. And what it was, it summed up white Australia. We had to borrow an animal as an icon. Meat pies, which came from the UK anyway, and we hadn't invented our own cuisine at that point.
Right.
And Holden cars, because you were either a Holden family or a Ford family, and Ford was US, so we went Holden. Right. So these were the markers, cultural markers.
Right.
I mean, please.
Right.
That was it.
That's
that
right.
Was it.
The human spirit feels unfed by that, right? And human spirit needs to be fed. I mean, I'm trying to look at it.
Needs more than that.
Needs more than that. And so their poor excuse for a substitute is this Christian nationalist fervor that essentially has nothing to do with Christianity whatsoever, but is this nationalist.
And all about white nationalism. And what they do very well, and I've got this from, I know various Mormon families in the Pacific community and different ones and stuff, but they're very good at creating a big community.
Yes.
Right? That genuinely does, care for something, if you're pregnant with your 9th child, someone will come and bring the casseroles, and, if there's a genuine community.
Right.
Of several hundred people, much more so than the average person is experiencing in their world. And that becomes your buffer. Therefore, there's just enough people there that never question, right? They're like-minded. This is the downside of the like-minded group. Okay, and it's just big enough you can find someone to marry within that group. Right. That's the ideal, and produce your little Aryan.
And that would be fine. That would be fine, except for the fact that you're indoctrinated to believe that everybody who is not part of that is
that's not the flip.
Enemy, or lesser or bad or have to
can't be trusted.
That can't be trusted. That's the problem. I mean, if they were just doing their little thing and I could wave to them from over where they are and they wave back.
Yeah, and you want to have 6 babies, off you go, pet.
But that's not how it is. And that's where this is the primate part, in my opinion. I mean, this is the part where we don't listen to the good angel on our shoulder, but the devil that says, you're my enemy because you're not like me.
Yes, it's that thing about other always, isn't it, Erika? It doesn't matter where you start a discussion, it's about the other.
Well, look at Netanyahu. I mean, his language, and he's not the only one, but, there is a difference between people who are Jewish and people who are Zionists. I'm just going to say,
yes.
Netanyahu as a Zionist will talk about the children of light and the children of darkness. And he doesn't see Palestinians as people. They're not people to him.
No, it's actually gone beyond that. Yes. Well, it's like every oppressive power has to demonize who they're killing, maiming, isolating, exiling. You've got to dehumanize them. And I think there's many of us who are struggling with the Jewish community who experience the true unmitigated horror of the Holocaust to be creating an apartheid state.
Well,
in
I'll
Israel,
tell you
it's
what,
really hard.
it's very strange, and I have my own theories about this. I think that there have been groups in history who have experienced horrific oppression. The Jews are one such group, not just during the Holocaust, of course, but across history.
Oh, for hundreds of years.
Tormented.
Terrible treatment. Terrible.
That's right. But then I look at Black people and I say to myself, our situation was no crystal staircase. And we have not, it wouldn't even occur to us to say, let's create a genocidal state and let's look and see who can we put down that we think is lower than us. We learned a very different lesson from what Zionists have learned. I don't know whether I have a theory. I don't know whether it's epigenetic mapping and that the wounds that a soul experiences are sort of coded into the genes. I don't know. I just know that these are two groups that both experienced real, ongoing, serious oppression. And one group had one response and another group had another response. Which goes to show, at least the good news is, it is possible to have an alternate response.
Yes, and that's very important that you brought that up too.
Right.
And I think this then leaches into, you were saying about Italian Americans becoming white or accepted as white, there was a 2-generation process for that to happen.
Right.
But what's happening with Latinos now who voted for Trump because they thought they were really white enough.
Proximity to whiteness.
Found out, to their horror, no. Because they bought that line. Trump said, I'm only going to send the worst of the criminals. So the hardworking immigrants think, I want to get rid of the criminals too. It doesn't mean no, because he's racist. If you're brown, he thinks you're a drug dealer, prostitute, rapist, etc. He has not got one good word for you as a brown person. So I'm interested. Sorry, I just want to just finish that point. Will they make that connection with the Black community that's never been made really before?
You know what? I think that racism and skin color, the whole concept, has been one of our less positive gifts that we have graced the world with. Well, and I say we, I had nothing to do with it, but white people. And so you will find lots of racism in Dominicans, for example. They can be very anti-Black, right? Cubans, there's a lot of differentiation in the way people are looked at depending on the color of their skin.
Brazil, the hierarchy.
Brazil. India.
A hierarchy of race that then gets policed. What started as the conquistadors demanding it, that they're half-caste children, and then it becomes self-policing.
Right. So do I think that Hispanics are going to say, oh my God, we need to be allied with our darker brothers? Well,
I wouldn't be holding my breath.
I'm not holding my breath, and that's unfortunate. But I do think we do have this opportunity to think about different ways the community can be. I mean, as I've said many times, when the revolution happens, we will be surprised at who's on the left and who's on the right of us.
Yes.
Right? And we may say, oh, wait a minute. So race, color is a construct. It's an identifiable thing. It's something that you can see. That's the only reason that they picked that, as opposed to, I don't know whether
it's always about the visibility.
It was
factor.
Right. So we have this big opportunity to look at things in a new and different way. Lena, it's
That's
not going to
what I'm
happen in my
hoping.
generation and your generation, but it could easily happen in generations moving forward, should they choose that.
I think so. And I think we've got to have faith in the young people. Like, we can all point to some young person lying around having their washing done by mum and not working, and how lazy is this gen. Others are working really hard. They're working 3 jobs and paddling really fast. They're working 2 jobs and trying to have a life. It's very hard.
The question is, what story will they listen to?
Sorry, I got distracted. Yeah, exactly. Will they
Yeah.
put it together? Oh, I'm in the same situation as the black teenager down the road and the brown teenager over here. And
well, but the thing is, the attention of those people is being vied for by lots of different groups. So let's go back again to Christian nationalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those young Christian nationalists are examples of people who are, working hard, trying to get ahead. They can't buy a house the way their parents were able to buy a house. They can't, and those the Christian nationalist Turning Point USA people are very happy to explain to them what that's all about.
And
right?
It's happening because we've let too many Mexicans in, so you haven't got a job.
Exactly.
And I think
so we need to have our own story.
There you go.
Right? Because if all they're hearing is that, well, then that's what they're going to listen to. I mean, it's kind of like saying the Republicans, this, that, and the other. Okay, that's all well and good, and you're not wrong. But what are the Democrats doing?
Yes. What is it? Not what you're against. What are you for?
What are you for? What alternate story can we tell these young people that can make them hopeful and helpful and non-racist? That's what we have to look at, instead of sort of staring in horror as they are sort of co-opted and kidnapped by a right wing that's all too happy to tell them a version of their reality.
And it then becomes a self-fulfilling and a self-perpetrating reality. Things still aren't better. That must mean there's more Mexicans than there were before, because my life isn't right.
Right. Well, we all used to think that, back in the 60s, oh, these old racists, they'll die out. Well, okay, they died out, but they had kids.
Yeah.
And you would think that their kids would say, oh, I don't want to be like that. But they're being lured to be like that. What are we doing to not lure them? And when I say we, I don't mean me. I mean white people, because they're not going to listen to me. I'm talking to white people. What are white people of goodwill going to come up with as the antidote to this Christian nationalist?
Exactly. And for Black people too, there's the exhausting double life, because you're living your life and engaged with work or school or anything, but having to navigate those spaces is radically different than it is for white students and white workers.
Right.
So if it comes to whether it's on a factory floor or in a university department, things need to be changed. What are we going to do? The voices are not equal. Having to constantly juggle, how much do I say before I get retribution as a Black person? And I don't think white people really realize how exhausting the double life is.
I don't think we think about retribution. That's what makes us different from the Zionists. But I will say this is something that's been written about and talked about for decades and decades. It's called the double consciousness. And yes, that's right. And that's why when the election went the way that it did, Black women said, well, I'm just going to mind my business and drink my water. That's why.
Because it's just too much to take it on again until people wake up.
Right. Listening has to stop being performative. And I think that the way that listening will stop being performative is if white people talk to other white people. Because for me to say it,
and it's also always been one of my mantras too. When people say, "What can I do about this?" I said, "Talk to your family, your pain in the ass relatives, your thing
right,
about this."
that's
You
right.
know, that's
And I'm
what
seeing it
white
more and
people
more, I
think.
have to say. And it's hard because when white people do have those kinds of conversations, what do they run the risk of? They run the risk, speaking of society, they run the risk of being removed from the tribe, considered, having not gone by the unspoken rules. That's the risk that they run of being tribeless. But I think that the benefit is there are other people who are also doing this work, and you can create new tribes that are much more generative, life affirming, and real.
Healthier.
Yeah.
Healthier tribes.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. But there's a responsibility, and I extend that too with issues around domestic violence.
Yep.
We as women, now I'm collectivizing women here, have done as much as we can. It's up to men to start talking to other men about what it means to be a man. and I see those as parallel social movements.
They absolutely are parallel, because if it's only women talking about it, there's sort of this implicit understanding that, that they're not heard. Of course they're complaining, and therefore our job is to not hear. Kind of like the whole black-white thing. It's the same thing. So men need to talk to men. White people need to talk to white people. That's when we'll start to see the kind of change that we really need.
Yes. And just a brief little story on that theme. In New Zealand, it'll be 20 years ago now, a film was brought out called Once We Were Warriors, and it was about domestic violence in the Maori community in New Zealand. And no one thought it would go anywhere because it was made for virtually no money, and it was about this heavy topic and who would watch it. And it ended up becoming a cult. And we had it on a video, VHS, and sent it to lots of Aboriginal communities and stuff too, because a lot of the issues. And what was fascinating was they started helplines in New Zealand when the film sort of started taking off, and these men would ring these, and they were called warrior helplines, right? And these men would ring up and they'd say, "I need help. I've got a warrior problem," meaning, I'm bashing up the missus, or my kids are scared of me, and I'm out there being the tough guy on the street and in the gang. I've got a warrior problem. And it was extraordinary.
Yeah.
Because they could say it in that way.
In that way, that's right.
Yeah. And the aunties would all go to the screen and say, leave him. They're saying in the movie house, come back home, bring those kids, So it had this huge ongoing effect, maybe for 10 years.
That's great. That's cool. I feel like in the midst of this morass, this hellscape, it's really important for us to think past it, even as we're dealing with it. To what would look like a more perfect union, not just in this country, but internationally. We have this opportunity, right, to create something from the ashes that will be left when all of this that's going on goes away. So that's exciting. I feel like that's hopeful. It's exciting. It's an opportunity to be creative and to think outside the box and to look to other cultures, like the one that I mentioned, where they said, you were kind to my daughter. You brought my mother food, so that you remind the person of their best selves and who they are in their, because that's who we all want to be ultimately.
Exactly. Good point.
Well, it is 7:00. The hour has passed.
I can't believe it. So, guys, thank you for joining us too. And we could go for hours, of course. I mean, just getting
Yes,
warmed
I
up,
mean,
Erika.
it's I love you know, I'm paying attention to you, and I'm always looking at the comments as well, and I love that people are so engaged. It's really terrific. Well, I hope
And there's a great comment here, just before we
yes.
go, from Chuck Hepner. Thanks, Chuck. From Carl Jung. Religion can be a defense against the experience of God.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love
Right.
that. That's right. It gets in the way
Get
of
in the
people
way. You know, and I
processing
mean,
their decent selves.
right. I mean, I think it means well, but all any religion is just a version. You know, I think of that as sort of facets of what really is real, and all we can see is the facet that we're
Yeah.
exposed to. But we have to
Mhm.
keep in mind that there are many facets that make
And to
up.
put on our 3D glasses and
Yeah,
keep
we're 3D.
looking, yeah,
Exactly.
and communicating. And so I'd just like to say, be kind to someone else who doesn't look like you
Hmm. Hmm.
for this week's little homework challenge.
Yes, yes. So do your homework, and we will see you all on our respective channels. Again, Lena is Lena Down Under. I'm in the company of Cards. You can rewatch this if you'd like on each of our channels, because the replay will be going up in a couple of minutes. And we will be back next week for episode double digit 10 of Worldview 360. So we hope to see you all then. Until then, have a great week. And we are around, we are with you between now and then, and we will be together and see you then next week.
Thanks, guys.